right, welcome everybody. I'll call the meeting of the WRC Executive Board to order at 6:01 p.m. Thanks for being here tonight. Any changes to the agenda? All right, hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to the administrative reports. We had our secretary's report from September 10th, 2024. The link to the draft was provided in the agenda, so I hope everyone had a chance to review them. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move. Jack and Tim, okay.
The secretary's report from our September 20. Sorry, I'm freezing a lot tonight, and it says my internet connection's unstable. So hopefully I'm freezing in a good position. So I think there was a motion from Tim and a second from Jack.
But vice versa, but yeah.
All right.
Cheers.
Okay. Any changes, corrections, edits to the minutes? All right, hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of approving the secretary's report, raise your hand or say aye. I have one. Bonnie.
Aye.
Jack, Ann. Thank you. Any opposed? And any abstentions?
I'm abstaining because it says I was absent.
Excellent. All right, so motion passes. Thank you. Next up is the WRC committee review process. And this is really up for discussion. We've sort of mentioned it in passing a few times during executive committee. And I know we've heard from some chairs that some committees maybe they're having difficulty figuring out how to lead the committee, what is the mission of the committee and the purpose in light of how we receive our funding and the type of nature of work that we are now doing. And I think I will let Chris sort of frame the issue for us in terms of how these committees, our committee structure for our RPC came into being, and how our funding environment has changed, and bring it up for how we might want to think about our committee structure moving forward and potentially reorganizing our committee structure. And one thing I will note is it's been really difficult. I think Chris and I have different are coming at this from different points of view, but as from my point of view as a chair, not necessarily different points of view, but we have
a good bit. You may want to cut off
endpoint.
What?
Gabby, you're freezing a good bit. You may want to cut off your video for a minute. Is she frozen? Is everybody else?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So anyway, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you need to say that from where you said you and I may differ from opinion. It got kind of garbled from there.
Oh, sorry. We might have different. We're coming from different perspectives. I think I from a committee member and Chris is from an ED and staff perspective. But I think that from a committee chair or commission chair, we have had difficulty filling certain positions on certain what I will call sort of core committees that are essential for our sustainability, like nominations. And so I just want to think about how we might reframe and revise our committee structure, should that be the decision of the executive board, to make sure we are not putting too much pressure on commissioners' time, and to make sure we have the sort of, I'm calling them sort of core committees, staffed for our long-term sustainability. But I'll let Chris give some background. Chris and I've had a discussion about this already, but I'll let Chris give some background.
Sure. So every committee
enter discussion.
Okay. Sorry, Gabby, it broke up briefly, but I think we all heard what you said. So we're good. So Jack would actually have more visibility than I do because our committee structure existed before I started here. I'm in my 15th year. I know when I got here, kind of looking back at minutes, I think I think it's fair to say that the committee structure had existed for decades, pretty similar to what we have now. And I know there was always reluctance to kind of change anything, but I think we're at a point where I know for me as executive director, now, and we're talking primarily about, we've got committees that are established in the bylaws, which are like finance committee, nominating committee, executive board, full commission, and I think project planning coordination may be one of those. I've meant to look before the meeting, but I just ran out of time. But the other ones are not, and project review, I'm sorry. But the other ones like energy, natural resources, community development, of course, we created emergency planning. Those types of committees are not listed in the bylaws. And it's up to the chair and executive board to establish whatever committees it wants to establish. But lately, I mean, like over the last few years or more, apart from like the committee's roles in those last committees I mentioned, apart from their role really in kind of participating in a review of our regional plan update and our policies, and the energy committee's very occasional role of reviewing municipal enhanced energy plans. They seem to have really kind of struggled for a purpose. I know we've been updating the purpose and objective statements from time to time. But from a very practical standpoint, I know staff have said, "Hey, I've been talking to my chair, and we're not really sure where we should be going." And just I've been concerned about whether or not we're making good use of all the resources of the commission, especially commissioner time, but also of staff time, and whether or not instead some of that time might be better put towards more engagement and outreach within the region, especially of towns and the public around issues and topics, as opposed to committees kind of being structured and figuring out what to do on a monthly or quarterly or whatever the regular meeting basis is. The other item is for our full commission meeting, Matt's going to be going over what all the Act 250 reforms, Act 181 reforms mean for the regional plan, and the future updates, which will begin almost immediately after we go through an adoption process for the completing the process we're going through now. And I'd really like for us to have more flexibility for you guys to create committees to address very specific issues that would be helpful to address as we do these updates. Because the regional plans will have a good bit more standing, and having more focused discussions around things like development areas, or when they define tier 3, which are tier 3 lands, which are resource lands, and how our policies might deal with those. I would like for us to just have the bandwidth to organize commissioners around some of the more critical subjects as we get into future plan update iterations, and more customize those committees to address those needs. The other thing too is, for some, especially for exec board members, I mean, on some months, you've got the executive board meeting, the full commission meeting, and at least one committee meeting. Some of you guys serve not only as chairs, but also as members on others. And so we have some months where you may spend, a good 5 or 6 hours in meetings. That's more than select boards are doing. And I just want to make sure that that's towards really good and productive purpose. And then to Gabby's point, we have had a struggle getting members on our kind of more operational committees. I think Gabby had a better term than that, but like nominating finance, and those, and just kind of really and trying to get more membership on those committees that kind of help guide our operations. So anyway, that's my summary. Gabby, did I describe that well? Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, that's perfect. Sorry, I think we moved our router and it's I can't it's not making it to my usual location, so I moved. So hopefully this is better and I don't freeze. Sorry about that.
You're great so far, yeah.
So, but yeah, I think our concern is, we talk about a lot of times. I mean, I appreciate all the time that everyone puts in, but I think to be, we want to be able to be as inclusive as we can be. And a lot of people that maybe are in full-time jobs or have families or, maybe are single parents, for example, just don't have capacity if they think they need to be in multiple meetings per month. And so I think it would open up, you know, additional, inclusivity, as well as and diversity, as well as be respectful of everyone's time. I want to make sure that we are in meetings making decisions, and I'm thinking that maybe thinking through and potentially revising our committee structure so that we can have a more flexible committee structure moving forward and make the best use of everyone's time, enable people to participate, and really also, best use staff's time. So I think that's all of our thoughts. I'll put it out there for discussion. Yeah, Anne.
I would heartily support making some changes. The difference between being on the project review committee with Jack versus the committee that I chair, the community development, is really night and day. Because with the project review, we have a very clear purpose and a goal, and the information is very clear. If there's a need for a project to review, we meet. If not, we don't. The community development, when I first started on it 2 years ago, we organized it to talk about housing projects around the region. That was really interesting, and attendance was pretty good. And then we had to do all the review of the plan, the regional plan, and that was a lot of work, and we lost a lot of people with each meeting. And we have new members now, but maybe it's just me, but I feel like I sort of have lost my way and I don't know what the purpose of the committee is. And I worry that I am boring people or wasting their time, or that they just don't have a purpose. And I'm finding it hard, and maybe it's just a matter of that I shouldn't be chairing it anymore, which would be fine. But I very much experience it as a stark contrast to what goes on the project review committee. Yeah, like that.
Okay, Bonnie had her hand up and then put it down. Did you want to say
And
something,
Jack had
Bonnie?
his hand up too.
Yeah, and then there's Jack.
Echo what Ann said. I was on the project review committee in the beginning, and when I got elected to the select board, I had to get off because the meetings conflicted. And I've been on community development, and there is a world of difference, and I really miss project review because it seemed like we were really doing something. Every time we met, we had a decision to make, and they were pretty big, impactful decisions. Community development doesn't always feel that way, especially since they took brownfields out of it. Because that used to be part of community development. And I'm not sure why, but Sue made it into a separate committee. So, yeah, sometimes now community development, you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
Considering abolishing some committees or combining some committees, or would it be possible to move to a situation where you had less committees, but the option of calling a special meeting when something comes up. Something more like that, rather than just every month the committee meets, unless there's literally nothing to talk about. I don't know.
And just one quick correction. It was actually the executive board that established a separate brownfields committee. It wasn't a unilateral decision by a senior staff person. Just wanted to.
Okay, well, why did you do that?
It's always been separate. It was always a separate steering committee, at least since I've been here. But I think that's neither here nor there. I think that your comments hold, and saying that it seems like Brownfields has to make a decision. Brownfields is doing something substantial. Same with project review. And I think several of us are feeling this way. Jack, thank you for waiting.
Well, I'm going to jump to the chase and maybe propose a solution. And I don't have much skin in the game since I'm stepping down in a couple of months anyhow. But it seems to me that there's really two kinds of committees. There's the committees that run the commission. That's finance, that's personnel, project review, I guess is statutorily required. And they don't have a lot to do with the overall workload. They have to do with just the business of running the commission. And the bulk of the other committees are there supposedly, if you believe the purpose and objective statements, to direct the work of the commission. And the work of the commission changes month to month, definitely changes year to year based on the work plan. So what I would maybe propose that we leave the committee structure in place for those committees that run the commission, finance, personnel, project review, and that we require commissioners to serve on at least one of them. And that's not a huge onus because personnel meets very rarely and occasionally. Finance does not, I don't think, meet every month. And project review, given the nature of the economy, meets at best every other month. And then the rest of the committees we abolish. And that they are established on an annual basis as part of the work plan based on what the work plan says we need to be doing that year. And where the commission or the permanent staff may need direction on those specific projects and objectives we've set for the year, and that they exist for that year. And if the work of a particular committee goes from year to year, it just gets reestablished year to year. And maybe, and I'm going out on a limb here saying we require commissioners to sit on two committees, one that drives the commission and one that drives the workload. And the workload ones may meet monthly, the other ones really don't. So we're not talking about putting a huge burden on commissioners. But I think rather than having a whole bunch of standing committees, some of which, just listening to what I'm hearing here, make no sense anymore or have no real objective or specific workload. I mean, the nice thing about project review is we have a very specific objective and we do drive the staff's work. We direct Alyssa what letters to write, what letters not to write, what to put in the letters, what policies to quote. And where the annual work plan, which we publish in August, I think, sets the work plan for the coming year. We establish committees for that year based on that specific workload. And like in this year, we may have had a committee simply for the purpose of working on the regional plan, because that was one of the big objectives of the year. Assuming we get it approved this coming year, then that may not be in next year's.
Mhm.
So that's just a thought of a way to go.
Yep, that's interesting. I'm gonna miss you, Jack.
I'll miss you guys, but this is my cocktail time, and here I am in a meeting.
Well, thank you for sacrificing for us. Interesting, Jim.
I'm fortunate being on the Natural Resources Committee. For some reason, every new commissioner we get in volunteers for the Natural Resources Committee. And, in rewriting the plan, the regional plan, yeah, we had a lot of work to do. But That's really the exception. So I agree with Jack. I think that's a great idea, Jack. And having people on at least one and probably two committees is also a good one to help people stay involved. I think the committee structure right now, even though we're not doing a lot of specific things, not counting the review of the plan, it keeps people involved in the Wynn Regional Commission. And so I think one or at least or two is a great idea for the base committees. Just saying.
I agree with what Jack said and what Jim said. I'm on two committees plus the executive committee. And it's that, plus I'm on the select board and several nonprofits. It's not a killer, but I'm retired, you know. But I guess what I was saying was kind of like what Jack said. When you need a committee, you know, call it to action and keep people involved, you know, make everybody serve on one of those foundational committees. Sounds like a good plan.
What
That is exactly what we did when Vermont Yankee was having its problems. We established a special committee.
Yep.
That's all it dealt with. Vermont Yankee went away, the committee went away.
What I'd like to propose is, and Gabby, tell me, or well, Gabby, unless you have a way you propose to proceed, I was just going to suggest let Gabby and I put our heads together and come back with a proposal to you guys next meeting. Because I like the ideas that you're all talking about. I like the idea about requiring commissioners to serve. The only problem that I've seen with that is they don't show up. And then we have quorum issues. And if we have operational committees and people aren't showing up to personnel or finance or project review or others because they're required to serve on a committee, I just don't want to create a new problem and trying to fix the old one. So I'm not pushing back. I do whatever you guys want us to do, but the idea is maybe let me kind of put my head together with Gabby and we come back with a proposal to you guys for February. Go ahead, Ann. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that can't there be two levels of committee members? So you have like your tier one, which is where you get your quorum from, and then everyone else is more like ad hoc. Or I know I work for a foundation and we definitely have that on our board. We have two levels of board members so that we have a smaller number, so we know that we're always going to have quorum.
Yep, let's think how we can. I'm really hoping that, you know, having fewer committees will shuttle people into the people who want to participate. But let's think if let me and Chris go back and talk through and see if there's a proposal that we can come back to y'all with. Let you know what committees we will be, you know, phasing, you know, sunsetting our proposals. You know, I think the ones that I'm calling them sort of core committees. Would be executive committee, finance, personnel, nominating, project review, project coordination, and brownfields. And in brownfields, I'm really calling it core because it gives that money and we need it, not because it's in a statute. It's not. That's probably the only one that's not in a statute or in our bylaws that's required.
Yeah, I think the technical term in the bylaws is standing committees. So those are the ones. That's the actual term for them in the bylaws for the ones that you just mentioned, Gabby.
All right. Well, thank you all. I think this was a good discussion, and I think it will help, you know, give us flexibility to be, you know, to react to what we need to react to and to put people's time to where we need to, you know, dedicate time towards. And then the hope is also, you know, if it's there's you know, working groups or annual task forces that then will dive deep into a matter that people are interested in and then bring up more decisions actually for the governing board as well, because I feel like the governing board is not making a ton of decisions at this point in time. Yeah, Jack?
As long as I'm throwing out controversial and new ideas, Project Review has not been overburdened for the last several years. Brownsfield has not been overburdened for the last several years. Brownsfield is a project. Somebody's looking at it and saying, does it make sense to help these people out financially because it's a project that's good for the region? Merge those two. Put Brownsfield in Project Review.
Not a bad idea. I'm
Alright.
happy to entertain any suggestions. So we'll think about how it might make sense to combine or reimagine those committees.
Okay.
And
As you're thinking about committees, I go back to my personal favorite topic, the issue of consolidation or coordination or shared services. And since there is the committee that's functioning right now up in Montpelier as part of the legislature, doing the research, as you're thinking about committees, would you just give some thought to whether or not it would make sense for the WRC to have a committee to sort of do research in parallel with what's going on in Montpelier, and to consider just to study proposals and discuss what might work in our region or what modifications might work in our region. I just feel so strongly that it is so hard being on the select board in my town in Newfane because of how we have no resources and no capacity. And the bench is so thin.
And I think that's going to kind of take care of itself in that there seems to be real interest now in exploring. I don't think they're going to decide to do it, but exploring the creation of councils of government, which would streamline that whole process. We had lots of discussion about this back in 2014. Of course, a lot of commissioners who are here now weren't here then.
Mhm.
So we need to educate everybody about it. But basically, under a council of government structure, you would have the highest elected officials from each town or their designees serving on that council of governments. And the purpose of that would be for towns to talk about what do they want to pool their resources to do together. Right now, the way that the Wyndham Regional Commission is structured, I mean, you're on the select board, but most people are not on select boards. It's town appointees. They can't speak, in most cases, they can't speak for the town.
Mhm.
So a council of governments would be different. And if you look at the Franklin Regional Council of Governments model, which I've promoted to the County Regional Governance Study Committee and to look at, because they keep talking about these bigger urban cogs. It's pretty simple. You've got the Council of Governments over here, and then you've got the Regional Planning Agency or Regional Planning Commission over here doing all the stuff that we do now. And it's a pretty simple and elegant way to do that. But if you don't mind, let's give this. I don't know what's going to happen with that County Regional Governance Committee because the Senate chair of it was reelected and the House chair was unelected. And so they've got to reorganize themselves. But I think, and there's a whole study that UVM is going to be doing around this stuff in support of that committee. So I think there's going to be a lot of thought coming out and that we can actually respond to as opposed to generating on our own. And I'm in the thick of it.
I think that's a stay tuned, and I think I think Krista will discuss it, and then we'll get back to the group with a proposal and an explanation about why we chose certain things or did not, and that way we can think about how we want to reimagine our committees. Cool. That was a great discussion. Thank y'all. All right. Next up is Brownfield's grant loan request and recommendation for the Bellows Falls Bike Project. This is a request that has been recommended by the Brownfields Committee for a $252,548 grant and a $13,292 loan. An update from the memo that was circulated that describes this project is Sue Westa updated us that Brattleboro Savings and Loans did do the underwriting and has approved it. for has approved that 13,000 and plus loan. So that is an update since the last week's memo. So I would entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the Brownfield Steering Committee and approve that grant loan combo. Thank you, Jack. Do I have a second?
1 second.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any further discussion? Yep.
Point of order, Gabby. Can Bonnie second that? Can she vote on this?
Can I? I don't know.
It's a nonprofit organization. Are you on it, Bonnie?
Not
Okay,
anymore.
because it's not the town.
Okay.
Okay,
I
Yep. You're in the clear, Bonnie. This is conflict. Thank you for checking that, Chris. All right, with that, we have a motion by Jack, a second by Bonnie. Any further discussion or comment?
It's mind-blowing how much this costs. It really is. All it is a parking lot. But you can't
Yeah,
make
remediation's expensive for sure. But it's good. It's money well spent if it's going to make it safe for people in your town, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Right? All right, with that, any further comments? All those in favor of approving the grant loan combo, raise your hand or say aye.
I
Thank you. That's unanimous. You can't vote twice, so the motion passes. All right, moving on to the 2025 full commission meeting schedule proposal, and I'll let Chris take that one.
All right. So we're gonna have a January full commission meeting where Matt is going to go over the Act 181 provisions and what that means for regional plans and regional planning and regional planning commissions, and also how we're going to do outreach to towns. But what I was going to propose, I just wanted to lay out for you guys. I proposed by statute and by bylaws, we're supposed to have a minimum of 6 meetings per year. And last couple of years, we've accidentally kind of had to backload the meetings. I'd like to propose maybe front loading them and give us more flexibility. So what I'm proposing is for you guys is a January meeting and a February meeting. Skip March, then meet in April, and that would be kind of an organizational meeting for you guys after we have the changes that we know are coming and any others that we are not anticipating. And then meet again in take May off, then meet in June. August would be the annual business meeting, and then conclude. Maybe it's another kind of end of year gathering, similar to what we did this past year in October. But that would then give us flexibility for the full commission to meet at other times during the month, but we're not running up against trying to squeeze in a meeting like in November or December, which can be really, really difficult. So just wanted to see if you guys liked that idea. Okay.
Thumbs up. I see Tim nodding, Jim nodding. I guess anyone who thinks it's a bad idea, speak now. Otherwise, we're going for it.
And I think June is when we're talking. I'm trying to remember the schedule, but I think that's when we're talking about adopting the regional plan. But that would give us flexibility, right? We could also meet in July if we need to. So for February, what I'm thinking about doing is having a presentation by UMass Amherst faculty on the four-town housing charrette and the outcome of that. We sent around the report. It was really, really good. So have them present that. But okay. So that's the plan. Okay, great. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chris, for thinking about that.
Yeah. Then inclement weather protocol. I talked to Gabby about this a couple of weeks ago. What I'd like to do is just get your all's. We can vote on it or not, but what I would propose is that if we have a meeting scheduled, full commission or executive board, the only and Brownfields committee, the only meetings we have to have a staff person at the office. if inclement weather occurs, and rather than not having the meeting because it might be difficult or impossible for me to get to the office to sit here by myself, um, instead, let's just have the meeting but not make any financial decisions. That's the controlling uh, requirement under the updates to the open meeting law. And just have the meeting anyway. We can always announce on our uh, website that the physical location is not going to be available, and we can notice that in on the agendas. But rather than like having to reschedule a meeting, just because I can't be here in person or nobody else can be here in person, when we could still continue to meet, even if there's an ice storm or something, rather than delay, I would suggest let's just proceed with the meeting. And I think we can certainly do that under open meeting law. And also like, right, we wouldn't want to vote on a regional plan. If we couldn't, if we couldn't have a physical location, really consequential stuff. But for meetings where we're not making money decisions or voting on a plan, I would encourage us to go ahead and have the meeting. I just wanted to see how you guys felt about that.
Sounds fine.
Okay. Unless you want to vote, I don't think I need one. I just
I don't think you need one either. I think this is more sort of a point of information and making sure everybody understood our approach. But I think it's important to make sure we can carry on business as usual and not put anyone's, life in danger for a weather event.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. That's helpful. And the next item, sorry, Gabby, do you want to say what the next item is?
No, I was gonna say I wish the Stephen Cheat was here. I think he had a question about the legislative session, and I know Steve Lemke likes to be updated about the legislative session, but hopefully they'll watch the video. But I asked Chris to sort of give us a summary about what are the priorities, and to let us know if there's things we should be aware of.
Well, they're pretty low key this year, in part because there's so many changes, and I think there's going to be a lot of kind of reacting to, as opposed to kind of for us taking lead on things. So right now, the RPC directors, VAPDA, the Vermont Association of Planning and Development Agencies, we have what's called a Government Affairs Committee, and that's a subset of directors who really kind of spearhead the discussions among the directors about legislative issues and keeps track of what's going on. And right now they're in the process of introducing RPCs to each of well, not necessarily all the committees, but the ones that we have most business with. So that would be like economic development, energy, natural resources, and those types of committees. And that's really critical because there are so many new legislators and there have been so many changes in leadership. And one of the things that I've found and have been talking about for years is not assuming people understand what RPCs are, how we operate, and what we do. And I think that message is kind of getting through loud and clear. And that's really a big part of the focus. Really explaining that, like, we serve our towns, our commissioners are appointed by our towns. We don't serve the general public. And there's been a lot of confusion around that, including like public engagement and to what end, when really it's the commissioners that make decisions and we support the work of our towns. We're not necessarily, so it's not saying don't engage with the public. We absolutely do, and we absolutely will. But too oftentimes, I don't think there's this really good understanding of the legislators about who it is that we work for and who we work with. So there's a lot of introductions going on right now. We're anticipating under Act 181, that's the Act 250 reforms. The bill was passed so fast, there are just some fixes that need to be made to it. So just doing those fixes, that's what we're focused on, and those are conversations that have been had over the summer, and they're minor. I don't even know them off the top of my head, but we've already talked to. There's a giant cat. Oh my goodness. We have you've been talking like the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and VLCT and other entities about there's just general agreement that, hey, these are some errors that need to be fixed. And then we need to see what emerges related to housing. Clearly, the governor has some ideas. We'll see what the new legislators have. We don't know what that's going to look like. On the clean energy standard, I know that's going to be an issue. RPCs really haven't had a position or been part of those discussions, and I don't see us getting pulled into them. But that's another one that everybody has kind of telegraphed that they want to talk about. There's been discussion about opening up the Global Warming Solutions Act, and much of the discussion has been around that I've heard in the press is about getting rid of that trigger where anybody in Vermont can sue the state for missing the greenhouse gas emissions targets. That's the primary focus. What I've kind of suggested to the other directors is we need to keep an eye on that one, because part of my concern is that, and I'm back on the Climate Council again, representing municipal governments. What I keep seeing on the Climate Council is the greenhouse gas reduction item so dominates that act and everything the Climate Council discusses, that the climate adaptation and resilience, especially rural adaptation and resilience, keeps getting almost a second thought. And really trying to elevate that. And from my perspective, from where I sit as a planner, there's an opportunity actually to bring the rural resilience and adaptation, or climate adaptation and resilience, and flood adaptation and resilience, all that good stuff, into line with the Act 181 reforms, like around the development area definitions, the Tier 1A, Tier 1B, the different tiers that would trigger Act 250 rules. To my mind, there's an opportunity to make things simpler, but also tie those things together. Oh, that was your cat typing.
The cat's very adept on Zoom. Sorry about that.
That's awesome. So there may be something there, but I don't know. I don't have there's no magic ball. And like I already mentioned, that on the County and Regional Governance Study Committee, the chair, the remaining chair, Senator Hardy, suspended that committee for the time being until they actually have new appointees, new legislative appointees to that committee, and then they'll resume. But it's possible that the work of that committee, because they're going to be so busy doing the other legislative work, that the legislature won't actually begin work on that. The legislative committee, the actual study committee that's composed of legislators, that may not resume until after the session ends. And the work of the technical advisory group that I serve on I don't imagine it will resume until we get direction from the legislative study committee. So it may not be until the legislative session concludes and that committee is kind of reconstituted and operational, that work will continue. I don't know if they'll take testimony this session. I don't know what's going to happen. So, but we'll be keeping an eye out on it. But those are the main things. Our budget situation is looking good. The governor included is going to, unless something changes. It's my understanding right now we're in for a 3% increase on top of what we got last year. So that's better than a cut. I mean, it's good that the governor recognizes that. So I think we're in good shape there. But I don't see us getting involved in the school discussions. But like I say, I don't know. I'm not sure the legislators know exactly yet I mean, I think they've telegraphed what some priorities are going to be, but what that's going to look like in terms of legislation, I don't know. So that's it. It's not particularly exciting. I do think it's the Global Warming Solutions Act. I do think there's an opportunity there. I really don't know what they're proposing with housing. But those are the main items. So any questions for me about that stuff?
Nope, and I assume you'll just bring to our attention anything that pops up during the legislative session that we need to weigh in on, or that want to bring up to, make us aware of, like you've always done in the past.
And I'll continue to do like I did last year. If I've been asked to testify, I'll email you guys and let you know what's going on. And just as remember, and as a reminder too, sometimes I don't know until like the day before. So I'll give you as much heads up as I can. Sometimes that's not much.
Fair enough, Chris. And then it's back to you for your executive director's report.
Yeah, so the field audit is completed. It's the same person from the auditing firm who did it last year, and he's really happy with with where we're at. So I anticipate a good report. I did give him a heads up about what we've seen in New Hampshire and Vermont, where there are false invoices that look totally legit from local engineering firms, where they're being asked to pay for whatever whatever the invoice is, and the municipality or whoever pays it, and then turns out they paid somebody who was not the engineering firm. So gave him a heads up because I think Mount Regional Commission got one of these and they caught it. It's really subtle stuff. It's like a changes to like what account you're paying. But Anessa is already to make sure she's calling the firms before we pay them to say, hey, just want to make sure that what we've got is correct. But I just gave him a heads up so that he can communicate that to the other RPCs too. So I think we're in good shape there. I've got the staff performance discussions underway, about halfway through for this year. At your February meeting, VTrans has asked us to update some components of our Title VI civil rights policy, which is good to revisit anyway. I think we last updated that a couple of years ago. So we've got some good advice on that. So I'll be bringing that to you in February. Rockingham has been, and Bonnie, you can speak to this if you like, has been struggling with VTrans and ANR around brownfields issues and conditions on the acquisition of the train station in Bellows Falls. And I suggested they write a letter to the governor, who I view as basically the chief executive officer of the state, saying, hey, would you please ask your agencies to work in a positive way to help the town move forward on this important development project. And the only reason I bring this up is in a article in the Reformer, I think Rick Cowan, who is chair of the Rockingham Select Board, said that at the urging of Chris Campany, they submitted this letter to the governor. And which is totally fine. I just want to give you a heads up in case any of you guys were wondering what the heck I'm doing meddling in that business. But I just suggested that the town reach out to the governor to make him aware of the challenges the town is facing. So, Bonnie, I don't know if you want to say anything about that or not.
I'm really, really glad that Rick contacted you, and I'm glad you gave us some advice. And our development director didn't want to do it, but I think lending your voice to the chorus made the difference, and we did send a letter. So thank you very much.
And I don't know if anything will come, but one of the great things about Vermont is, a town, that can make a difference in this state. Because our secretary level and our senior leaders and state agencies are really accessible. So it could make a difference. We'll see. And Bonnie, in case Rick doesn't or Gary doesn't, if you get wind that it is making a difference, if you could just flip me an email and just let me know.
Just to fill everybody in, the problem is we can't buy this land. We can only lease it because VTrans owns it. And it is toxic. And VTrans does not want to be responsible for that toxicity. They want us to be responsible. And the Department of Environment is saying they're going to sue VTrans because of this issue if they don't fix it. So we're kind of stuck in the middle, and we could fix what's been identified at this point, but more is likely to be identified. And we don't want to buy it if we're going to be on the hook. We can't get BRELA because we don't own that land. It's complicated. But when we start, if we have to put in new, and we will have to put in new water pipes and things, we're going to disturb more land, and there's probably going to be more hazards identified. So we're trying to get them to come together somehow. I don't know how they can, honestly, unless V-Trans wants to clean up that whole rail yard, and you know they don't want to do that. So we'll see.
Thanks. And then I'll wrap up. So I've reached out to last year, we did the Four-Town Housing Charrette. We worked with UMass Amherst and the American Institute of Architects Community by Design project to do a 3-day charrette. Really, it was 4 days, but to basically look at, hey, where might there be opportunities to build housing out and away from flood hazard areas, and what we think we learned from that process, which was an experiment, was that there was benefit to having towns talk about a shared issue together, even though they were looking for solutions within their own town, because it created a situation where they were learning what the neighboring towns were thinking about how they might approach it. And also it kind of diffused the typical tensions you might have if it was just purely an internal conversation within a town. For lack of a better term, and I mean this with great affection, everybody was kind of on their better behavior. So they weren't sniping at each other as they might internal to a town because it was multiple towns together. But the other thing that came out of that was like unexpected things we didn't even expect, like Winhall talking about maybe we want to explore creating a new village center because Bonneville is at such risk of exposure to flooding and fluvial erosion. Hey, we've got 400 acres. Maybe we should look at a new one. And then that triggered Londonderry to think about, we've tended to think of the North Village as really kind of our commerce center. Maybe we really need to be focusing more on South Londonderry and growing housing and civic uses and other things there because it rises more abruptly from the river and it actually has more potential wastewater capacity. So it just got people thinking. And then the charrette process, that visioning, where what you do in a charrette process is you actually do kind of really quick, rapid design scenarios, conceptual ideas. And that got people visualizing, kind of seeing a shared vision, not necessarily their shared vision, but a vision that they could all see about where housing might go in places they had never even thought of, especially on town-controlled land. And so what I've proposed is bringing in UMass Amherst and American Institute of Architects, and they're up for it. Having a discussion not so focused just on housing, but where in an area might you think about growing up and away from flood risks. And what I've proposed is, and I haven't reached out to these towns yet, but what I've proposed is that we work with the Deerfield corridor towns, so Dover, Wilmington, Whitingham, and Reedsboro, to kind of go through this charrette process. It would begin with a visioning and then a scenario planning graduate studio would kind of do more detailed analysis about what land they have where it might make sense to kind of make investments and look at growing in the future up and away. We're not talking about moving towns, moving villages, though I guess the town could talk about it if they wanted to, but really just kind of helping them identify where those opportunities might exist. So this would be a bit of an experiment again. And if it works, then we could work with other communities throughout the region on this. But that would be an initiative that would take place this fall. So I just want to let you guys know about that. So I'm working on a note to the towns. The other benefit of this too is that, we would work with the planning commissions in those towns, but the amount of time that they have to spend on this is literally a matter of a few hours, not days, weeks, or anything. And they could take this information or leave it. It's intentionally, the goal is to be very low pressure, and just kind of get their minds thinking about how they might proceed. So that's what we're proposing now. Yeah, and then we're also working with the UMass Amherst Senior Landscape Architecture Studio. Last year they worked on the Route 30 corridor, looking at community connectivity, connecting people to each other, connecting to the river. And based on that experience, I realized they really need to kind of have a smaller area of focus. Though at this point in the program, they are looking for a larger scale project area. So what I proposed was that they use Saxon's River as a lab. So Saxon's River agreed that they would really enjoy doing this, and so that's going to be the focus of that senior studio. As a reminder, excuse me, just dry throat. As a reminder, this isn't like the village necessarily being a client. It's just literally like where the students are going to be spending their final undergraduate laboratory in their graduating semester to kind of apply what they've learned and develop, further own the skills that they've developed and create some new skills. So that will begin. That'll be this spring semester. So it's pretty excited about that. And then we're going to work with the Conway School for Landscape Design on developing an outdoor recreation economy inventory and analysis. That's a graduate program at Conway in Massachusetts that's focused on landscape design, but they do a lot of planning work too. And the idea is that I would like for us to create for the region an outdoor recreation economy plan. What they would be doing is kind of gathering all the information about all or as many outdoor recreation economy opportunities that we have, map those things, look at relationships among those things and how they relate to our villages and downtowns and other things. Do kind of a high level precedent review about what information you need from an inventory perspective to do an outdoor recreation economy plan. So basically, the students would create the conditions for us to then try to get funding to get a consultant on board to develop an outdoor recreation economy plan, and that would take into account not only the resorts and like those big developments, but also like the Long Trail, Appalachian Trail, Catamount Trail, Grafton Ponds, Windmill Hill Pinnacle Association, hunting, fishing, try to look at everything as a whole, because we have so many opportunities and assets in the region. It would be a huge task for staff to try to map all this stuff out and aggregate it. So the idea is pay these students to do that. And then they learn a lot in the process. So hopefully you guys are okay with that, but to my mind, it's just a really important thing to do. And a real opportunity. And the only other thing, I already kind of gave you a preview of your February board. The only time that Tracy and I could find a place to vacation at down on the Cape would be the second week of June. And so I was going to propose that you guys plan on not meeting in June because I won't be here. But if you need to, Sue Westa, our associate director, could certainly staff the meeting. But I apologize for scheduling it that way. But it's just, as you all may know, it can be really difficult to find time and space. So that's when we could find it. And we also found that's a real sweet spot down there, somehow between Memorial Day and down in Provincetown, the Portuguese festival. Because after that, the prices go through the roof, and everything is really busy too. So it seems, I guess the water's a little colder still that early in June, and may still get some snow. I'm kidding, but anyway, that was a slot that we were able to get. So I hope that's okay. But I think we'll get you guys covered regardless.
Yeah, I think that's fine. We'll plan on not meeting unless there's some decision that we need to and we'll enlist Sue Westa.
Okay.
Yeah, Bonnie, sorry.
I was just asking, where are you gonna stay?
We're Wellfleet.
Roughly, I lived in Provincetown for 14 years,
Oh wow.
Wellfleet for several years.
We went to the Cape for the first time last year, and we get why people like it so much. That National Seashore is a really neat place to go.
Have a good time.
Thank you. And that's all I've got.
All right, great. Well, I thoroughly encourage you to take time off. So I'm glad you're doing it. All right, with that, committee chair reports are next. Does anyone, oh, Jack?
I almost hate to bring this up, but since I'm going to be leaving in a couple of months, um, something I just want to throw out as you consider the executive board, consider who takes over project review. I foresee, and maybe I'm being a gloomy Gert, but I foresee some really contentious moments and problems coming up, and I'll say the next 6 to 9 months. One of our major resort centers has been operating without a master plan for multiple years now. And the plan that preceded the one that is now expired bears no resemblance to the reality of what the current owners say they may or may not want to do. And the current owners have been pretty reticent to get involved in the planning process and really make any substantial effort towards planning. I am quite certain within the next year they're going to want to do something major, be it lifts, be it expansion, be it base lodge replacement, something. And there's no plans in place. And I have a feeling that's just going to end up being very contentious. With them arguing with us, arguing with the state, arguing with A&R, and I just, throw that out there as a heads up for whoever, is involved at that point. But I foresee some real ugliness there.
And Jack, that is Mount Snow you're talking about, right?
It is.
Okay.
After several months of having no leader, they did announce publicly a new head has been brought in. Her first day, I understand, according to the papers, was 12/19, week before Christmas. To my knowledge, she's not reached out to us to meet anybody yet. I haven't heard anything from Melissa. I suspect that will be happening in the next, I would hope that happens in the next month or two. But I don't know her. I don't know her management style, so I don't know what's going to happen. But the parent company, Vail, has been in the press an awful lot. For those of you that follow the ski industry, they've been in real deep doo-doo for the last couple of months. And their management style seems to be showing through as we're going to do what we're going to do and screw the rest of you. And again, I'm reading a bit between the lines there, and it's what I read in the press and what I see. So I just foresee not another haystack, but not a real amicable going forward project review situation.
Okay.
Thanks for the heads up. I feel like you're gonna just be getting everything out in the next couple months. I can't wait for our next meeting. I like it, Jack. It's all good.
On a related note, I'll just note that within the planning community, people were really happy to see who was appointed to the Land Use Review Board. I mean, the goal was to professionalize that board, and there are a lot of exceptional planning professionals on there. And the chair or the director is oh gosh, now it's based on her name. Anyway, she's coming out of she was the planner for Manchester. She's coming out of Bennington County Regional Commission. But she's excellent. And Alex, who's the long-serving planning director for Heinsberg, is also really excellent.
Great.
Okay.
All right. Any other committee chairs want to bring anything to our attention? And we don't have any action items, but we will come back with it. We'll add an action item that Chris and I will discuss and get a committee proposal to y'all for the next meeting. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
In Tim's absent, I'll move adjournment.
Thank you, Jack. Second from Tim. Jim. Jeez. Sorry. I'm just used to it. All right. With that, it's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand or say aye. It's unanimous. We're adjourned at 7:05 p.m. Thank you all for your preparation and your good comments today, particularly around the committee restructuring. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Go watch basketball, Chris.
Okay.